Oh, I think.
I'm already going to tell them that my time was out. But my name's
Oh, wait, do I need to put this one? No.
I'm not going to cover out loud. People all die quietly.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. Okay, so, and when I turn, when I unmute, it's going to, yep, perfect. Perfect, you're amazing.
This is you, that one is you.
I will never remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, okay, okay. How about I mean,
You want to introduce yourself?
yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah, that's good. Okay, this is good. Okay.
We'll go ahead and get started.
Something just happened. Okay, okay. Oh, that'll be amazing. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Y'all are amazing. Did I just start? Oh. Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. You know, before we get started, I'd just be really interested to know what you would be really interested to know. I'm going to take a few notes here, but I'd be, you know, there's a wealth of experience and strength and hope in this room in terms of all the various ways that we might have encountered this universe. And so I'm really interested in what you'd like to know or take away or contribute. That would mean a lot to me, so I could get a feel for directions we need to go. So just popcorn out, just questions that you have that you'd like to walk away knowing more about. Come on, come on. Shame, okay. Great, what else? Okay. For sure. Okay. Awesome. What else? Okay, say more about that. What do you mean exactly? Like perceptions? Okay, okay, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Okay. What else? Yes, ma'am. Uh-huh. Okay. All right. Okay. Other questions? Okay. It's hard to know how you know, where we all are on this journey, you know, learning about this. So so I'm gonna just jump in here. My name is Lauren Barron. I'm a family physician, and I have worked in primary care with the underserved for 30 years in Waco, Texas, which is a very poor community. I also have come to learn much more about this, not just from a professional context, but from a personal context, and that has completely revolutionized how I interact with patients. And so I'm going to be sharing some of that with you. I think I should start this all by saying, my name is Lauren, and I love alcoholics. Okay. And you're supposed to say, hi, Lauren. Okay. That's how we do it in meetings. Okay. My name is Lauren. I love alcoholics. Hi, Lauren. Okay. And, so I'm really, really glad to be here today for so many reasons. I have been, strongly influenced by this book called Breathing Underwater, by Richard Rohr. And I highly recommend this book. I'm going to just read a few little excerpts from it. And I have to start with this one from Richard Rohr. Almost 35 years ago, I gave a set of talks in Cincinnati, Ohio, okay, to link the wisdom of the 12-step program with what St. Francis of Assisi called the marrow of the gospel. I was amazed how obvious and easy a task it was, and surprised that this was not equally obvious to everybody involved in either of these fields. So the least I can hope to do here is to make what seems obvious to me a bit more obvious to you. And he begins with a poem. That's where the name comes from, Breathing Underwater. So I'm going to read this for us. I'm going to read it twice. I built my house by the sea, not on the sands, mind you, not on the shifting sand. And I built it of rock, a strong house by a strong sea. And we got well acquainted, the sea and I. Good neighbors, not that we spoke much. We met in silences, respectful, keeping our distance, but looking our thoughts across the fence of sand, always the fence of sand, our barrier, always the sand between. And then one day, I still don't know how it happened, but the sea came without warning, without welcome even, not sudden and swift, but sifting across the sand like wine, less like the flow of water than the flow of blood. Slow but coming, slow but flowing like an open wound. And I thought of flight, and I thought of drowning, and I thought of death. And while I thought, the sea crept higher till it reached my door. I knew then there was neither flight nor death nor drowning, that when the sea comes calling, you stop being good neighbors, well acquainted, friendly from a distance neighbors, and you give your house for a coral castle, and you learn to breathe underwater. I said I'll read it twice. I think I'll read the second time at the end. So Richard Rohr talks about the idea of the 12 steps as underwater breathing lessons for a culture, a church, and for those of us who appear to be drowning without knowing it. And that's where this gets its title. One of the things he talks about all through this book are the spiritual principles. And of course, St. Francis, he's a Franciscan. And so he's very well versed in that spirituality. He writes, we are all spiritually powerless, however, not just those who are physically addicted to a substance, which is why I address this book to everyone. Alcoholics just have their powerlessness visible for all to see. The rest of us disguise it in different ways and overcompensate for our more hidden and subtle addictions and attachments, especially our addictions to our way of thinking. And he talks about the connection between basically Jesus' life and the mission or the gospel or the central message of the 12 steps, which is we suffer to get well, wounded healers. We surrender to win. we die to live, and we have to give it away to keep it, and all of those parallels in the Gospels. As a physician going through medical training, I never realized how many addicts and alcoholics I was going to take care of. Nobody ever told that to me. And so I try to let all of my students know that, they need to learn everything they can about addiction and alcoholism, because they're going to be taking care of so many alcoholics and addicts, and also that alcoholism and addiction is much closer to them than they realize. In our families, it's much closer to them than they realize. Friends, families, and I didn't know that until about 17 years ago. And the way that I learned about taking care of alcoholics and addicts was about the physical addiction. Okay, that's what we learned about, helping people in withdrawal and taking care of the physical consequences and complications of alcoholism and addiction. And that's all I learned. And what I didn't understand was the threefold nature of this illness, this process, this situation: the physical addiction, the mental obsession, and the spiritual malady. Nobody ever taught me about that when I was in medical school. So it was no surprise then that my experience was with alcoholics and addicts. I'm going to say alcoholics just because it's long, but I mean, maybe I'll say addicts, but the whole realm, all right? So nobody ever taught me about the mental obsession and the spiritual malady. And so it was no surprise then that I had the experience of patients, like a lot of us do, coming back and back and back in the hospital over and over again with the complications, with the hepatic encephalopathy, with the cirrhosis, with the infections, with all of the esophageal bleeding, with all of the reasons that patients come in over and over and over again. And I want to be careful, but a lot of us in medicine know the phrase circling the drain. Okay, I want to be careful with that, but shorthand for getting worse and worse and worse. And over again. And it's easy to absorb the stigma against alcoholics and addicts in medical culture. And it's easy to become hopeless and have less hope. And I think there was a point in my own life where I didn't even believe in sobriety because I really had never seen it. And then through a series of circumstances, I ended up being married to an alcoholic that I am grateful to say I thought was the worst thing that could ever happen in my life. And it has ended up being a doorway into resurrection and redemption I could have never dreamed of. And so I started going to AA meetings, to open AA meetings, and they go around, "Hi, I'm Dale, I'm an alcoholic. Hi, I'm Brad, I'm an alcoholic." I'm like, "I'm Lauren, I love alcoholics. Hi, Lauren." And what I saw in those meetings was stunning to me, because I saw miracles, so many miracles in that room. And it was like seeing a bunch of unicorns. And what I realized is that people do get well, they do recover. That's happening every day. And guess where they're not? They're not in the hospital. They're not coming to see me in the clinic. So I never saw it. And so it has just been miraculous to me to get to hear some of those amazing stories. I'm thinking of two people I can picture right now who both have liver transplants. If I had been in charge of a liver transplant program 25 years ago, I would have never thought that you should consider giving a liver to an alcoholic. And these two men are not only are thriving, but are helping other people get well. So it has been a revolutionary change in my understanding. And so I'm really excited to try to share with you what I know. And we're all in different places with our understanding of this. But there's so many ways we can talk about it, so many angles. This is called the Big Book, all right? And I recommend that you get a copy. And let me tell you something. You meet old timers, they know this book like scripture. And when I say chapter and verse, I literally mean page number. And they have done lots and lots of editions, but you don't change the page numbers that things are on. Ooh, do not change the page numbers because they know it chapter and verse. And there's lots and lots of ways that I could introduce this topic, but I think that one of the things I want to do is take you to a meeting with me, okay? So we're going to try and see if this is going to work, and I think it is.
Hello. If anybody's coming with that today, anybody that wants that meeting, hook up with them. Sorry, I got it on YouTube.
Okay, so this is a miracle. Okay, this is a 24/7 AA meeting. It's called aahomegroup.com. Okay, it's constant. Do you know when this started? In January of 2020. January of 2020. Imagine what this was like in March of 2020 when everything shut down. And it was just incredible to be able to see. Well, it was a really interesting experience when we're all, shut in, and to be able to go to these meetings and see people all across the world, hundreds of people at a time, in this room, helping each other through, the pandemic and trying to recover and share their experience and strength and hope from all of these things. And at the top of the hour, every hour, a new meeting starts. Can you hear that? So we'll just join the first part of the meeting, okay? And this is an open meeting, okay? So we're not doing anything wrong. It's an open meeting.
Thank you for a wonderful meeting. And thank you for speaking, Chair. Thank you for remembering the gentleman in the chat that I need before you all.
Did you hear his reading?
I didn't. I got here a little late, but I spoke to him last night.
Here's what he just read. It was absolutely the program. Absolutely fun. Everybody will get. All right, have a good meeting, Ryan. I'll be back at 11 for big Dorothy George.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Terry. All right, everybody. We are going to gather and say a prayer to open up this meeting. Welcome to AA Home. This is the 24/7.
Can you hear it back there?
And I'd like to open with a prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Welcome again. We're open 24 hours a day, and we're going now for so many hours. I forget the exact number of hours, but this meeting has been going on for 6 years, and I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for the people that helped bring me to this place where I can help chair a meeting, and just really glad to present this kind of thing for you guys with the newcomers. The AA preamble states that Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. Our next group conscience meeting will be Saturday, April 25th at 3:15 p.m. to 5:15 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is a important meeting because we have 4 positions that are going to be voted on at this next group conscience. So if you're interested in participating in the voting and or you have someone you want to nominate for a position, that will be the meeting to attend. The group conscience, Saturday, April 25th. 4 positions are going to be filled, so it's going to be a pretty important meeting.
Right.
I know we have some safety positions that need to be filled and some others, so please join if you're interested. The next steering committee meeting will be Wednesday, April 29th at 4:15.
These are all opportunities, of course, for service.
The steering committee's meeting, all the members of the home group are free to sit in and listen in that meeting.
Right now, there's 82 people in the room. And if I were to show you the participants, you'd see they're from all over the world.
The business meeting room. I think it's, let me just check, we'll check again when it's called again. It's in the middle column, it says business meeting room. So you can just click in there when it's time to join. The 7th tradition states that each AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. We're seeking funds for our Zoom operational costs, web hosting, Big Book program expenses. So if you're interested in contributing, the 7th tradition link on our homepage is where you can contribute via that.
Okay, I was hoping he was going to read this part of the, and he'll get there, but we don't have time to wait. But he was going to get there with the preamble. But I just wanted you to see what a great resource that is, that you can recommend to your patients. And for yourselves, I just recommend that you listen in on a couple of meetings, and I really think that you will be rewarded by that. So since he's going to get to it, but what I'd like to do is have us read how it works. So this is a common reading in the meetings. And so what I'm going to do is start with this first paragraph, and then I'm going to say pass and ask somebody else to read it. Okay? Is that all right? Okay. Rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They're not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They're naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you've decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. All right.
Some of these we bought. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely.
That last line.
Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling power. Without help, it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him
now. Yes, ma'am. Can you read?
Yeah. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked for protection and care be abandoned. Here are the steps we took, which we suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted no powers over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore to us. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood it. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrong. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all his defects of character. Okay.
Can somebody take it from 7? Yes, ma'am.
Humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our constant contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry it out. 12, having had spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Somebody must explain what in order can go through with it, not be discouraged. In order long as the able to be anything like perfect adherence to these principles, we are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. It's supposed to be set down our guidance to progress, bring spiritual progress to cover the spiritual perfection.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So these are the 12 steps. And I think, and I hope you might agree after doing some of your own research, that these are good steps for all of us to be working. And there are lots of different ways to talk about the spiritual principles and some of the basics of what underlines these steps. I really like this one, that these are virtues and characteristics that are featured in each step. Honesty, hope, surrender, courage, integrity, willingness, humility, love, responsibility, discipline, awareness, and service. I really like that. This one's a little more abrupt. I can't, God can, I think I'll let God, okay? And so some people call that the 3-step waltz. You know, they keep doing the 1, 2, and 3 over and over again, but maybe not making it through the rest of the steps. So I can't, God can, let God. So this is another way of thinking about it. Something that I really have enjoyed learning about are 12-step prayers, and you can find these anywhere. I mean, just go online. You can look up the 12-step prayers. Of course, the Serenity Prayer from St. Francis is one of the most used ones. It's actually longer than this. I said St. Francis, that's not right. It comes from another theologian, and this is just part of it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You'll hear that in almost every meeting. But there's actually prayers that go along with each of the steps that some people use. And I am a particular advocate of the 3rd-step prayer. This is something I have in my bedroom. I have it in my office at work. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would serve of your power, your love, and your will, your way of life. May I do your will always. And I grew up a King James girly, but I have to say I stumble over the these and thys a little bit now. But I think it's an amazing prayer to pray, and helps orient my days. I'm particularly drawn to that bondage of self, and how much as a physician, that bondage of self is something that I need to acknowledge over and over and over again. So this is why I love Alcoholics, because I love all of these amazing tools, spiritual tools. This is a 7th-step prayer. And this is, humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. is the 7th step. My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defective character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. So the 12-step prayers, I think, are amazing. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the 12-step promises, but I wanted to put those in front of us today too. You can see them here as I talk. The 12 promises. And again, I just want to emphasize how startling it's been and how much I've learned having more friends who are alcoholics and addicts in recovery, and how important that has been for me personally and also in my work professionally in terms of completely different ways that I approach my patients, because I recognize how much hope there is and how things can really change for them. Usually I carry with me all the time where the meetings are in town. The meeting that's considered, the home group in our family is called Turning Point, from that reading at the beginning. We stood at the turning point. But being able to know when and where the meetings are happening really, really paves the way for conversations with patients. And it's kind of hard to find online. It's a little easier to go to one of a local AA meeting and get it on paper, because sometimes the online versions can be not that accurate. But the 12 promises are another, I think, important tool. There's several types of meetings, so I just took you into an open meeting, which everyone is welcome. Friends, family, allies, anyone can go. A closed meeting is for only those who, identify as alcoholics. Speaker meetings are usually in the AA tradition, and of course there are lots and lots of different 12-step groups, right? Lots of different kinds. But in the AA tradition, speaker meetings are traditionally where a person gets up and speaks for a longer period of time, like maybe 20, 30, 45 minutes. And you can hear a lot of these. You can go to YouTube and find lots and lots of these. And so speaker meetings are pretty much, it's like having a guest speaker. Most meetings are discussion meetings where a topic will be introduced and people go around the room and share their perspectives on that topic. And then I used to think in the beginning that that going to meetings was equivalent to work in the 12 steps. And over time, as I started to learn more, no. The meetings, going to meetings is not working the 12 steps. That can be a part of it. But actually doing the work of the 12 steps is something you do usually with a sponsor. Usually it involves, writing things out, actually doing things and working through each step. There's all kinds of workbooks and step studies. So another thing that tends to happen is meetings will sometimes focus on the step that corresponds to the month you're in. So if you went to a step study meeting and it's April, you'd be working on, made a searching and fearless moral inventory, which is a daunting step. So those are some of the different kinds of meetings. I wanted to say a little bit about I'm trying to introduce you a little bit to the lingo if you don't already know it. So some of us in this room will know it, but some of us might not. So we've got newcomers in this room and old timers, okay, just like AA meetings. So these are some of the slogans: one day at a time. That one's been around so long, that doesn't land with me, but I really like stay in the day. I've heard that in the room, stay in the day, and that really helps me. Stay in the day, there's something about that one. First things first, keep coming back. Another one that I didn't put up here that is one I use all the time is do the next right thing, the next right thing, do the next right thing. And that has helped me so much that I've learned in the rooms. Keep coming back. That just keep coming back to the big book, keep coming back to the principles in the meeting. Easy does it, just easy does it, but do it. That's the other part. Easy does it, but do it. And then, of course, you've heard of let go and let God. So that's where a lot of these come from. I wanted to give you some more lingo. All right. So these are some of the other things. A birthday. So some of us know these. Some of these might be new to you, but if you know someone in recovery and they say it's their birthday, they're a lot of times referring to their sobriety date and not their actual birthday. Okay. A newcomer is obviously, somebody who's new to the rooms, and an old timer. I've met people with 50, 60 years sobriety. So somebody who's got a lot of miles in terms of sobriety. Crosstalk in a meeting, there's some etiquette around a meeting. And crosstalk is when people are sharing their own experience, you don't give them advice, you don't ask them questions, you don't interrupt them. The role is to listen and receive that and be present to the story, but not to offer advice or anything like that. That's considered crosstalk. And a lot of us are so selfish and like to hear ourselves talk so much that it's a good practice to be in a meeting and just sit and receive those stories. And especially if we're in the business of giving advice. A civilian is someone who's not an alcoholic. That's like code for somebody who isn't an alcoholic. Dry drunk, this is a really interesting concept that it took me a long time to learn, is that sobriety is so much more than just not drinking. Okay. You cannot drink, but continue to have the mental obsession and the spiritual malady. And so a dry drunk is someone who may not be drinking, but is still occupied with all those character defects and shortcomings. Double winner, does anybody know this one? This is when you get to be a member of 2 12-step groups, okay? Yeah, double winner. And a geographic cure is the idea that people try to take a geographic cure if they think that they move somewhere or they go somewhere else, and then that's going to be the solution, and it isn't. I love this one. If you're not sure if you're an alcoholic or not, go out and do some more research. And what they mean by that is to go, which is, scary for me as a physician, honestly. But if people are not ready, they haven't been given another phrase. I love the gift of desperation. And they're not ready to say they're an alcoholic or not, well, just go see how things work for you. And another thing I've heard is, you know what, if you keep coming back and keep coming to meetings, and if you decide that if you don't feel happier and more peaceful, we'll gladly refund your misery. Okay, yeah. So that's what they mean about doing more research. A 12-step call. So if my husband says I've got a 12-step call, that means somebody's called him that needs to talk about maybe somebody who's never been able to have the courage to walk into a meeting, or maybe they're a professional, or they don't, anyway, names get around. And so if he says, I got to take a 12-step call, he's going to meet somebody for coffee or to talk somewhere. For coffee. Okay, coffee. So these are some other phrases that it's sort of like, it's like code switching, okay? If you use some of these phrases, then your patients are going to probably recognize some of them if they've been in the rooms, if they've been in recovery, if they've been in the rooms. So alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful, which it certainly is. I love the phrase happy, joyous, and free, that's the goal of sobriety, is to be happy, joyous, and free. Progress, not perfection. As a recovering perfectionist, this is another important slogan, I think, for a lot of us. And it's important to focus on our experience, strength, and hope. Okay, these are all phrases that come straight out of the big book, okay? So to focus on our experience, strength, and hope, rather than reciting all of the horrible tragedies and disasters that were created in your life, DWIs, prison, divorces, obviously that's part of somebody's story. But you also want to get to a place where you can share your experience, strength, and hope, not just the disasters you've left in your wake. Take what you like and leave the rest. That's kind of how I feel. I should have started this session with that. Take what you like and leave the rest. Some people call that cafeteria style. Okay. So when you're in a meeting, you're not going to agree with everything. But it's really important to think about the similarities and the things that you have in common with people in the room rather than focusing on the differences. Like, well, I'm not like them. I'm not an alcoholic. I use ice. Okay. I'm not drinking it out of a brown paper bag. I use ice. So focusing on the things that you have in common rather than things that are different. There's another phrase in the big book called terminally unique. This idea that with addiction, you think, well, but I'm different. My situation is different. So I like that cafeteria style. If you hear somebody say 90 and 90, what that means is early in recovery, recommending 90 meetings in 90 days. A meeting a day. And think about having to drive someplace. 90 and 90, aahomegroup.org, so that's kind of lowered the barrier to entry. I'm not saying it's the same, an online meeting is the same, but I am saying it does make it more accessible. The idea that credits don't transfer, have y'all heard this one? So say you're an alcoholic and you're a Coke addict. Well, Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, they like to say the credits don't transfer, so you have to start the steps again. And carrying the message is an important part, like in step 12. But you don't just have to be an alcoholic to carry the message. When you've seen people in recovery, you want to tell people about it. Friends of Bill W. Bill W. is the one who, Bill Wilson is the one in the 1930s with another, and there's a whole history. And there's actually a great movie about it. I'm thinking, what's his name? James Wood, I think. Does anybody know that actor? Okay. Well, there's a great movie about it. So Friends of Bill W. means an alcoholic. So if you're in the airport and you hear someone paging Friends of Bill W. to gate 9, they're getting ready to have an AA meeting. Okay. So that's another little inside track. And then I like this one, meeting makers make it. So going to meetings regularly has a significant, a good prognosis going to meetings. I really like this one. Everyone stops drinking sooner or later. It's good to be alive when that happens. So I really like that one. And so those are just some of the ways that I've learned so much from this world of recovery. And I can tell you that it's completely transformed my orientation to being with patients. Where I walk in, I can literally walk in the room with hope. And what I've learned about this process too is something we've said in the plenary sessions. There was a time when I was in the ICU with my husband on the ventilator in multi-system organ failure. He had acute pancreatitis and DTs. I didn't even know you could get those at the same time. Okay, but he was an overachiever. I'd never taken any care of anybody with acute pancreatitis and DTs. And aspiration pneumonia, any one of which will kill you. And I'm standing in the ICU in the hospital where I worked, holding on to the rail and watching his blood pressure fall to 50, 40, and my knees going weak. And I didn't know what to pray. The only prayer I could think of was, God, please let him live so I can kill him. Okay, that's the prayer that I thought. And also, the other part of the prayer was terrified that if he died, I would never recover from the fury and the anger and the bitterness. And I can tell you that I had no hope. The bar I had set for alcoholics and addicts was very low. Okay, very low. Like the bar that I set for alcoholics. See what I did there? The bar is very low. And he's the only person I've ever known that left the ICU to go straight into rehab. And he's the only person I've ever known who has been miraculously sober and delivered from his disease for 17 years. And so we're so grateful. I mean, we're so grateful. And I asked him not to come today because I thought it would be a little, I'd be a little too self-conscious. But it has been a doorway that we never dreamed of. In terms of how to support, well, let me just say a few things about how it's changed when I'm with patients. So I went in one morning, first thing, nothing better than a good I&D first thing in the morning. You feel like you've done something. So this patient came in with an abscess on the neck and walked in. I'd never met him before. And I can see sores all over him. And I'm trying to think what my opening salvo is going to be with him. And there I am with my pearls and click, click, click in my heels, And I started numbing him up. I said, sometimes when I see patients with skin problems like this, it's because they've been doing meth. Does that sound familiar to you? I'm like, that was good. That was a good one. I'm gonna have to keep that one in my back pocket. He said, yeah, I fell off the wagon. I said, you got a sponsor? And he's like, yeah. I said, have you called your sponsor? He said, no. I said, do you know Sid? He goes, Sid's my sponsor. You're not going to tell him, are you? I'm like, no, I'm not going to tell him, but you need to call Sid. So Sid's a friend of mine who sponsors a bunch of people in NA. And I can tell you, I had street cred with that patient instantly, okay, because I knew Sid. Another story is, this one always makes me laugh, is this man came in and first doing his H&P, do you have any allergies? He said, yes, I'm allergic to alcohol. And I said, really? There's a whole section in the big book about an allergy to alcohol. I said, really? What happens when you drink alcohol? He said, I break out in rashes. I said, really? What kind of rashes? He said, rashes of immoral and illegal behavior. I love that. I love that so much. I just love that so much. And so the other thing I would say about that is that when I go into these rooms, there is so much joy. And even if somebody comes in off the street and they look like death sucking on a pickle, I mean, even if they are so sick, there is still nobody, tamps it down. There's still so much joy in the room. And most people don't expect that. They don't expect it. And so it's an amazing place to be. So for me, these are ways that I've tried to help support my patients. So knowing how it works, becoming acquainted with the 12 steps, reading some parts of the big book. I don't know, there's blogs, there's videos, there's, speakers meetings on YouTube. You can find anything. So I've just educated myself, tried to educate myself more and more. In person, but also online and reading lots of amazing books with a spiritual connection like this. Having that list of meetings. There's this thing called paper. You might have heard of it. And I just find that having that paper, I have a clip. I'm a big clipboard fan. So I walk in with my clipboard and I have about 10 copies there. And I have and we could discuss the relative merits of this, but I've even offered to meet patients at meetings. I was going to the meeting anyway. It's an open meeting. And so sometimes it hasn't happened a lot, but probably 5 or 6 times patients have come. And of course, they're not my patients then, but I have a list and I go to them. I've already shared with you aahomegroup.org. I know that didn't land with the announcements right at the beginning. Usually the announcements at their end, but I promise you magic happens in those rooms. It just didn't happen right here today. And having phone numbers you can share. So I have the numbers of alcoholics. I know his number. He's my husband. So I have the numbers of alcoholics. And if I have somebody who's really serious, and I think they're, ready to do the next right thing, take the next step, I don't tell them, hey, this is a guy I'm married to. But I have numbers of several people that I try to do some matchmaking. Of course, if women, if it's a woman, that's different. But having numbers that you can share and people that you can call. It doesn't cost anything. It costs nothing. There's nothing billable about this, okay? And I am baffled as to why we don't talk with patients and find out if they're open to a 12-step call when they're in the hospital, okay? It wouldn't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything. You don't have to, there's not even any paperwork. You don't even have to write a progress note. They don't have to have hospital privileges. They're just coming to visit. And I have just found over and over again that AA has more to offer my patients than my medical training did. And I also think learning the lingo helps, so it's a matter of hospitality, right? Being a little more, letting them know that that you're really invested, that you know about recovery. So I should stop there and ask, I don't know how this is coming across because there's so many people in so many different places. And I'm going to say I do not have a lot of experience with some of the parallel groups or some of the, you mentioned Genesis, and there's something called the Dunamis Project. I know there's lots and lots of different versions. This is the main version and lexicon I'm familiar with, but I'd be really interested to hear from you all, to share your experience, strength, and hope about this with the rooms. So, yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar with the malls?
Little bit, Celebrate Recovery. So my understanding, and I have never been to one, my understanding of Celebrate Recovery is that any kind of addiction, that you're welcome in those rooms. And so I don't know a lot about it. I just know that there's certain addictions, like if somebody was dealing with porn addictions, other kinds of addictions, might not be as comfortable in some of those rooms, but maybe some others are. So I don't know. Do you know a lot about it? Okay. Anybody got Celebrate? Yes, sir. Yeah. So I know that there's a recovery coach pathway, and where I'm clutching is I don't know if it's with the state, right? But yes, absolutely. And my sister's one. My sister's been clean for 5 years, and she's working with Parkland Hospital now. But what I want to ask is I want you to give a workshop next year. Seriously. You did? I want to come I want to come learn from you, seriously. I didn't see a lot about recovery last year, and so that's why I wanted to have something. Yes, ma'am. Hi, Tanae. And maybe we need to just have a meeting too, But I was going to say that I really hear that, and I have heard a lot of people, and I really respect when people say, I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic, or, instead of saying, like you're saying, identifying as an alcoholic, I'm a grateful addict in recovery. Validation is my drug. And so I don't mean to be too flippant with that. I'm saying your point about how we all need to be in recovery. And that's one of the messages of this book, is that we all have a need for recovery. So I think we're at time, but we can still hang out, okay? So thank you all for coming. Thank you. I hope this is helpful.